I do love that song. I love the last words of it. The Lamb is all the glory of Emmanuel's land. And I do believe that the sands of time are sinking. Have you ever looked at an hourglass before? I like looking at hourglasses. My grandpa used to have one, and I used to flip it upside down all the time. I think it's a better way of keeping time than the clock, because a clock gives the illusion that it just is going to keep going round and round and round forever. But an hourglass, you see how much time is left and how much time has already been. You know, you see it's a finite amount of it. And the sands of time are sinking. But as it gets to the last bit of sand, it seems like those last bits of sand just start swirling around and it's finished. You know, I think that we're living in the days when the sands are starting to really swirl and it's circling. We sing the Christmas song, "When with the ever-circling years shall come the time foretold," when Jesus comes back. And, you know, it's coming. The sands of time are sinking. And Jesus is going to come back one day soon. But here in Luke chapter 20, where we're looking today, the Lord Jesus, he had a very limited amount of time left. He was in the last few days of his earthly ministry, and he knew he was going to die in just a couple of days. We don't have that luxury most of the time that we know when our departure will be, but the Lord Jesus knew. And what did he do? What would you do if you knew you had only days to live? Would you curl up on the couch? Would you get some big bowl of ice cream? I don't know what you would do, but the Lord Jesus, he spent that time out in the temple teaching people and answering their questions. And we've been looking at this after he cleansed the temple, after he entered into Jerusalem on that Palm Sunday, we call it, that triumphant entry. He came back the next day and the next day, and he taught the people. And they were coming to him with questions, but we showed that during this exact same time, when Jesus came into Jerusalem, they would be bringing the lambs into Jerusalem through the sheep gate. And the people would select which lamb they wanted to take to their home, and they would inspect that lamb for 3 days. And on the fourth day, they would kill that lamb. And the same time that Jesus was killed on the cross, I believe, the lambs were being killed in the temple. Jesus was the lamb. But they were supposed to inspect that lamb in their home for 3 days to make sure it was without any spot or without any blemish. And they were doing the same to Jesus. They were asking him questions. They were inspecting. Maybe they didn't realize that he was the Passover lamb, but they were inspecting him. They were hearing him. He was on open display for them to see everything about him. And yet they still killed him. We've seen how the Pharisees came. The Pharisees came and asked Jesus a question here in Luke chapter 20, saying, what authority do you have to do these things? How dare you cleanse the temple and drive out the money changers? What authority do you have? And there was that. He told them the answer by telling the parable of the vineyard, how that they were just keepers of the vineyard, and he was the owner of the vineyard. God was the owner, and he was the owner's son, and he was come to inspect. And yet the keepers of the vineyard, when they saw the son, they said, "Let's kill him, and that we might have the inheritance." It wasn't their vineyard. They were just the keepers of the vineyard. And these Pharisees, these Jewish people, they were given a job, a role to do in history that they were not doing. They were soaking up all the fruit for themselves. And they realized Jesus was talking about them, so they immediately did exactly what Jesus said the Pharisees were going to, the people in the parable did. They said, "Let's kill him." That's exactly what the parable said they were going to say, and that's what they said. The Pharisees did that. Then, even though they were enemies with one another, the Pharisees and the Herodians and the Sadducees all got together, and the scribes, they all got together and they all started asking questions.